Titanic, and yeah, this is the big one. This was like obviously the biggest movie of all time, most successful movie of all time. Won 11 Oscars. Became this kind of cultural phenomenon. So like really, what is there that I can say that hasn't been said already? But I like this movie. I know it gets a lot of hate. Because so popular. People want to hate on what's popular, but yeah, I think honestly, this is like a very, very great movie. The fact that James Cameron kind of recreated the Titanic in a way, an event that happened at least from the movie like 70 plus years prior, 80 plus years prior. The whole reason why he wanted to make the movie is because he wanted to travel down to the Titanic and see the actual wreck. And he was like trying to convince the studios is like hey, I mean, we can do this with miniatures, or we can go to the actual wreck of the Titanic and film with submersibles and like underwater cameras and everything. And the studio was like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. So the fact that he got his whole expedition to the Titanic wreck and was able to like film there practically, yeah, I thought it was a really like fun fact. But yeah, the fact that he was always interested in the ocean and like underwater wrecks and everything. Obviously we can see that through his filmography with The Abyss and with Titanic here, and then later with The Way of Water. I was always had an interest in the ocean and his whole Jacques Cousteau documentaries. But I was also reading that once he actually got to the wreck of the Titanic, he kind of felt like that emotional weight. The fact that this was an actual thing that happened. 15,000 people died during this wreck. And he wanted to pay his respects, so he would go to researchers and go to historians and just make sure that everything was historically accurate as it could be. So when it came down to like designing the sets and like building the actual practical Titanic ship, the costuming, the props and all that, he wanted to be like as accurate as possible. And then the fact that these historians actually came onto the set of the Titanic movie and were able to see like nope, you really did everything right. I think there's like some things he said that they didn't get completely right here and there, but I mean, the average viewer isn't gonna see that. Just as a production itself, it's just like a feat in general. People were saying as he was producing, like, this is gonna be James Cameron's folly. It's gonna be the biggest flop of all time. This is gonna be his Waterworld in a way. So kind of like what I was saying before, it's like, hey, don't bet against James Cameron. So when he's gonna set out to make something, he's gonna make something great. And just like a bunch of fun facts that happened with it. The fact that like there were so many production delays. It was supposed to come out in July of 1997, but then it got pushed to December, because all the visual effects that happened. The fact that James Cameron gave up his fee to finish this movie and get it out there. The fact that he hasn't gotten a penny from the profits of Titanic, which is kind of ridiculous in a way. Like come on, Fox, give James Cameron his money. Like he deserves it. The fact that it was just such a tumultuous shoot. Like the fact that the crew got food poisoning during like the filming. Kate Winslet almost suffered hypothermia. Leonardo DiCaprio, his whole kind of diva attitude, like I don't want to get cold and all this stuff. It's just crazy to think of like all the stuff that they went through just to make this movie. The fact that they actually made it and how it became a phenomenon. You have to at least appreciate it for that. Whether you like the movie or not, in that aspect, I think that's something that needs to be talked about. But yeah, speaking of just the movie itself, I think the fact that kind of draws on aspects of like old Hollywood movies, like old Hollywood romance movies, like Gone with the Wind. Like you can kind of match the plot points of like Gone with the Wind over onto this movie. Kind of has like that kind of old-fashioned Hollywood feel to it, kind of like the old epics, like a David Lean movie or something like that. Dr. Zhivago, all these like 3-hour epics that they made back in the day. Yeah, you just really don't see anymore. And the fact that people were doubting, it's over 3 hours and it's about like a ship sinking and it's gonna be people in like corsets and like what is this? There can't be any sequels. It can't be a franchise. You can't merchandise off of it. It's gonna be like you have to kind of like these relatively unknown actors. Kate Winslet, she was in Sense and Sensibility, and Leonardo DiCaprio was kind of like this up and coming actor. He's in like What's Eating Gilbert Grape and all those movies. So yeah, I can understand like the doubt that was going in. Like I said before, the fact that it was like pulled off at all was like really good. And I think the main hatred that kind of gets over on the movie is just the fact that it's kind of like an earnest movie. Yeah, they're just trying to be like wholesome movies like they made like back in the day. They're not trying to be like, you know, those hard edge like 1960s, 1970s gangster movies where everything was kind of really more realistic, kind of reflecting the time, because, you know, America's going through like the Vietnam War and, you know, Watergate scandal and all that. So the fact like back in like the 1940s and stuff, you know, they were trying to make more just, you know, like timeless classics, not really do anything with any cynicism or anything like that, just make just nice wholesome movies in a way. So I think that's why it kind of gets a lot of hate, because it kind of represents movies that came out back in the day and things like that, along with, like, you know, like Avatar and stuff like that, where it's really just, they're just trying to just be wholesome, authentic, escapist movies in a way, and not really reflect the time that they're in. You know, a lot of people like don't like the relationship between Jack and Rose, but I mean, I think it's a good relationship, you know, like a very much Romeo Juliet situation where, you know, like realistically, you know, this romance probably wouldn't ever work out, but, you know, with the movie, you know, obviously it doesn't work out in the end because, you know, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie, Jack dies. But then with Jack dying, you know, Rose is kind of inspired to kind of live again. Where they first meet, you know, she's about to jump off the side of the Titanic, commit suicide because she's going to be married off to Hockley, and then, you know, it's this whole arranged marriage that she's not interested in. And then, you know, Jack comes into her life and, you know, gives her a motivation to live again. You know, gives her a motivation at first to like kind of go off with him and kind of live this kind of free lifestyle, you know, apart from Hockley and all his money and stuff like that, where she can, you know, feel happy in a relationship even though, you know, she's not going to be like rich or anything like that. And then, like I said before, when Jack dies, you know, she kind of has this freedom to kind of make her own choices. And then as we see at the very end, you know, where the camera's kind of sweeping past all these different photographs of her life and all these experiences that she had, you can kind of tell that she kind of feels like that life again that Jack inspired in her. And, you know, she was able to, you know, have all these experiences and stuff. So I think in that aspect, there's a reason why like so many people went back to the theater, because, you know, yeah, I guess it's a great love story, but in a way, you know, it kind of inspires people to live, you know, in the face of all this tragedy, you know, it allows people to, you know, kind of move on. You know, the whole song like My Heart Will Go On, you know, which I won't sing here, but you know, it's kind of it's more like inspirational in that aspect where, you know, it inspires people to live their life, you know, despite tragedy, and, you know, kind of come together in their communities and, you know, have their lives go on. So in that respect, you know, I think James Cameron succeeded with that.